one of the most important pieces to Midday Squares and is the fearlessness that all three of us have. Lately, I've been getting asked, how do you remain fearless? This pretty much sums it up. If I give you $1 million, how would you feel right now? Ecstatic. That'd be great. I'd be so grateful for it. How would you feel if I gave you $10 million? Oh my God, that would be even better. What if I told you I give you $10 million, but you're never going to be able to get out of bed again? Whoa, I don't want that. Exactly. So you are valuing you getting out of bed at the value of more than 10 million, because you're literally going to reject 10 million bucks in order to continue getting out of bed every day. That's how you train the brain to be fearless, is that the mere fact that you're breathing and waking up is like a fucking blessing in itself.
Hello and welcome to DTC Podcast. I'm Eric Dyck. Today we're reconnecting with Midday Squares co-founders Jake Karls and Nick Saltarelli. These two are like live wires, and the chemistry on this talk was absolutely great. I just can't wait to throw down with them in Las Vegas in just a few weeks, March 23rd and 24th at C-Suite Mastermind in Las Vegas. There are still a handful of tickets available, but they won't last long. So go to directtoconsumer.co/events to lock in one of the last few spots. This is a C-Suite mentor preview. And it focuses on the most challenging aspects of Midday Squares' meteoric rise to 8-figure success, from the challenges of scaling manufacturing of complex projects to Nick's guidelines for raising funds, and Jake's unique role as a rainmaker, as well as his personal struggle with a nagging back injury that reminds us all of just how precious our health is. This podcast made me realize that I too am a rainmaker, so it only makes sense that I'm bringing 100 DTC founders to the desert March 23rd, 24th. Are you ready for the storm? Midday, all day. Let's go. Is 2023 the year you launch the merch store for your brand? If you're looking for a new revenue line and a way to increase brand loyalty and LTV, you might want to consider it, especially when there's players out there like Printful that make it easy to build your brand's line of merch without any of the operational headaches of inventory management or stock forecasting. Printful's product options run the gamut, from socks to hoodies to home decor, and everything super high quality with printing options that will look amazing with your brand's design on it. If you've got merch on the mind in 2023, think Printful and go to printful.com/enterprise to start creating today. Jake, Nick, welcome to the DTC Podcast. We are live here with Midday Squares. When I was putting on an event in Las Vegas, I thought, who do I want to headline? I want those Midday Squares gang. Nick, what I was just saying, is one of the very first podcasts I did with the D2C podcast, and we were just catching up on that. Jake, we didn't get a chance to meet. Heard a lot about you specifically, but let's catch up. I forget, where, we did this sort of in the beginning of 2021, I feel like, originally. What has the Midday Squares ride been like since then?
One word. Fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a whirlwind of craziness. I think the biggest thing is America, the U.S. is the largest part of our business. It's surpassed Canada. Canada's obviously still a major growth driver, but just on a population basis, the U.S. overtook Canada in terms of revenue for Midday Squares, and both are accelerating. We were a 2-square business. We're now a 1-square business. We've changed flavors up. We've launched new flavors. I mean, so much has happened since we last spoke. Almost went bankrupt a few times along the way.
Holy fuck. What do you mean 2-square?
He's not including that we cried ourselves to sleep 30 times probably plus throughout the 2 years that we've done since doing this podcast. Think about that.
That's wild. And that's just through the tribulations of growth. You're growing, but it's it feels like a rocket ship where you're just holding the panels on sometimes. Is that how it feels?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is we're a manufacturer. I mean, your listeners know this. It's not as simple. Okay, so coming from the software business that I did, I was in software for forever. When you catch scale, the incremental unit cost of scaling is very low. We in manufacturing actually have serious constraints. You have capacity constraints, you have machinery constraints, and to the point now where we have to basically expand this facility to $110 million of output, while simultaneously building a mega plant of $250 million of output. And we got to land all of this without crashing. So you're scaling, you're slowing down, you're pacing, you're figuring out your flow. Okay, we see we're going to smash into a constraint wall here, so we got to make a CapEx investment here, predicting that we're going to be here by this date. And oh yeah, by the way, for you to take on Costco here, you're going to want to make another CapEx investment to ride it simultaneously through. And because we're venture funded, you kind of have to grow at 40 to 100% year over year. And so you're just walking a tightrope, basically trying to balance this whole thing without going bankrupt. And that's why every great manufacturer will tell you, Elon said it many times on stage, what you get paid for in manufacturing as a founder is scale without going bankrupt. That's where the big dollars are. Who could scale without going bankrupt?
That's interesting. You guys do not have a simple product either, right? Like you're sort of this cross-category, multi-ingredient sort of thing. You're not just pouring chocolate into a mold, right?
We wouldn't be an innovation if we did that.
Exactly.
We'd be boring.
We have to think of everything from the ground up. Eric, before we go on that note, it's like, listen, if you don't have to manufacture, don't do it. That being said, it's very hard to innovate when you don't have to manufacture. So it's a double-sided sword. But it doesn't mean that it can't be done, and I don't want to knock on it. I just want to make everybody remember that we were forced to manufacture. It wasn't a choice. And that's really important. So yeah, the complexity was definitely there. And the only way to get Midday Squares into the grocery stores at scale was to build a plant.
It becomes your moat, right? The more you invest in the product up front, it becomes a little bit more of your moat.
Dead on.
Jake, what's been the most stressful part for you?
Well, personally, right now I'm going through a back injury, so that's literally, I think only people that will go through that will understand how much it affects your journey as an entrepreneur. Like it's leaking into that life tremendously, and it's killing my spirit. So I think that's been the hardest climb, actually, believe it or not, out of everything we've been through, from legal battles to raising money to to almost going bankrupt. Actually, I think that's been the hardest moment of this journey. It's a never-ending war that you need to fight and you can't give up on. And the moment you give up is the moment that everything just falls apart, right? And literally. And so I've been doing that for the last 2 months and trying to stay positive. I think that's something that I hope people listening to this can relate to, that there is hope and there is movement as long as you keep pushing and you stay focused with your mind and your body. So I think that's been the hardest journey, believe it or not. Nothing to do with business.
It makes sense. I've the expression like a healthy person can have a million wishes, but a person who's under duress or in pain or whatever has one wish, and it's like, yeah, stop the pain. So that sucks, man.
Eric, I met this guy. What's so weird about this whole process? I met this guy 3 months ago. All he talked about, his name's Howard Paynes, very successful serial entrepreneur, unbelievable legend, good human, no ego, just a good vibe. And he kept reminding me, health is wealth. And he would just say it all the time. And I was joking around. I was like, yeah, lol, health is wealth. This is like December. And then as soon as January came, I literally got the injury. And now I can understand why it means so much and why that guy who's been through 3-4 businesses successfully keeps reminding people health is wealth and take care of it. And it's just like, you're right, it's one wish, right? It's one wish that you'll do anything for, you'll pay anything for. And business, it's a lot more than one wish, right? You're doing a lot of different things, especially as you scale a business with 40 to 100% year over year growth. I think that's the crazy thing. And, I'll never forget now, I'll always preach health is wealth to anybody previous to an injury or previous to getting sick, God forbid. But that's part of the business journey as well. I think people forget that aspect.
I want to add something on that note for the listeners, because I think this is just going to fire them up, and I think it's really important. I think one of the most important pieces to Midday Squares is the fearlessness that all three of us have, in the sense that we are literally willing for this to fall apart in order to reach our vision. And then lately I've been getting asked the question, like how do you remain fearless? And I was listening to something the other day, and honestly, we have so much content coming at us. I can't even remember who said this, but this pretty much sums it up. Okay. So he was saying, hey, he was speaking to guests that were on his show. He's like, if I give you $1 million, how would you feel right now? And people were like, oh, I'd be, ecstatic. I'd be great. I'd be so grateful for it. And then he said, well, how would you feel if I gave you $10 million? And, oh my God, that would be even better. And then he said, well, what if I told you I give you $10 million, but you're never going to be able to get out of bed again? And I'd be like, whoa, I don't want that. And he said, exactly. He goes, so you are valuing you getting out of bed at the value of more than 10 million, because you're literally going to reject 10 million bucks in order to continue getting out of bed every day. And so every day that you get out of bed and are feeling good, yeah, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be everything, but you're starting off with incredible momentum and a win. And that's how you train the brain to be fearless, is that the mere fact that you're breathing and waking up is like a fucking blessing in itself.
I love that. And you don't look down. You just sort of feel like you got to keep running when you're building this business. And it's like failure is an option. You'll be fine on the other side. But until you failed, you just keep going. I've heard it's sort of like good entrepreneurs just are like, they just become insensitive to failure in a way, right? Just because you just keep running at it.
Eric, I swear to God, and I'm not even trying to say this for pity or sympathy, I think once I finish this war, I can actually accomplish anything. I actually think it was my last T of fear that I've had, because now I'm understanding that game of the mind. It's my last piece missing. And I believe that it was it's shit, but it's the greatest thing I've ever gone through, because now I know there's no fear. There's nothing else, is what I'm trying to say. Is like, I've seen us almost go bankrupt in our business. I've seen us have to worry about potentially going to court with, with one of the biggest giants in the chocolate industry in the world that has the most amount of money to play with. I've seen us, lose a term sheet within a week. We had what, a month left of cash to raise money during the holidays.
3 weeks.
Yeah, during the holidays. I've seen it all, and that fears have all gone. Actually, that going through the fundraise again, going through all that stuff, it ain't scary. Now, the last thing was health, and health was the last one that I was worried about. And going through this, I'm learning how to create that defense mechanism against that fear. And once you have that, you can literally do anything. And this is why someone like Elon does everything. Literally, the guy is a whack job. I love him personally, but he's fearless. He's absolutely fearless.
Because it's two-sided. It's two-sided, guys. There's a humbling effect in this too. And so, Eric, name me the sickest, most relevant human from 1346. One. Just name me one.
Copernicus.
We all have no clue,
him?
right? We all have no clue. I made up 1346 because you, I, and everybody. In 1346, there was a Michael Jordan somewhere on this planet. Like, the world, there was
weaving baskets or something.
Yeah, there was
not
just
shooting them.
There was somebody that was as relevant as the most relevant person today in 1346. And the point I'm trying to make is, you have no fucking clue. I have no fucking clue. Nobody has a fucking clue. That's how irrelevant you are, both in success and failure. Okay, so like, if you just humble yourself in that way, like, you can't, like, I don't know. I'm just not scared of anything, to be honest, because of that.
I love it. Fearless. We're getting fearless. Speaking of fearless, how has been the capital game in this different market than it was 2 or 3 years ago? Has that been an added layer of complexity?
Nick, let's tell them the strategy. Let's release the strategy to everybody. Let's just release the hook and bait. And You could explain it in deep detail if you want, but I think everyone should. I think every brand has to have something along these lines.
Okay, well, Jake, you want to kick us off to get my brain going, so I know how to take it from there. Just line me up here.
Yeah. So here's the problem. Most companies go fundraising, right? So they have to, right? In a scale, and when you want to scale quickly, I'm not saying everybody. Some businesses have cash right off the bat, but a lot of the time they can't find the money. So when the time comes, they have a process they have to go through, and they have to actually do cold reach outs. They have to build the relationship, start it up, get the due diligence, and have a very small selection. Or they hire an investment bank, and it's not as authentic in the sense of you're not seeing the passion as much, right? So you're not seeing the heart and soul. What Nick and I do is very unique, and it naturally came. It wasn't even like a scheduled thing or a premeditated thing. we focus on building relationships years in advance. So what we'll do is we'll go out and show up all over the world to hang out and make friends. Forget about agenda. Forget about titles. Forget about if it's an analyst or the managing director, partner of a private equity, a venture fund, or a family office. We go out there, we make them feel something deeply. We build a relationship, a friendship that almost has the ability of allowing us to sleep on their couch previous to even an investment or anything like that. They have that tightness with us. And when the time comes right, because the flow is so fluid, we then know exactly what we need. And Nick will create he will QB a perfect term sheet of what Midday Squares needs. So the priority of Midday Squares first, and I'll let Nick take it from there, but he'll have a list of 60 different friends. And I say friends because it's important to then choose from.
Yeah, no, Jake Neal, I think number one, I don't know why. So I think every company that is trying to do scale and is in any type of fundraising needs a rainmaker. So in law firms and investment banks, the role rainmaker is a real role. It's he or she who spends all of their time soliciting and bringing together people in the hopes of when the time is right, a deal could get done. So they have no actual mandate. So Jake's our rainmaker. And so, for instance, Jake is not bogged down by the corporate needs of Midday Squares, doesn't have a management role that will hurt his brain and being able to be free in that thought. His one job is to build relationships without any preconceived need and then funnel them back to HQ to develop further. And so I think the amount of inbound we've had, we're fundraising all the time, even though we're not fundraising. So I think to your point, the fundraising climate's going to be cyclical. It's going to be hard. It's going to be easier. It's going to be hard. It's going to be easier. I think the one thing you could do as a brand or anybody is take life into your own control. Stop being reliant on others or cyclical natures. And how you do that is make sure that you have hundreds of people coming into the inbound process, so that by the time it comes time to fundraise, these people know, one, who you are, the relationship's built, and then you can develop a competitive process. And I would say the competitive process is about being frank with everybody and not going too wide. So I think what we do is we'll do like a wide net. We'll have tens of people come in by the week. And then that gets segmented into who do we really feel are right fits for Midday Squares. And that will go down to like a 10 list maybe. And then by the time we're fundraising, we're doing it with 4 people. And I think the most important piece in the fundraise is to have a win-win in the sense that we're getting the terms that we want, and we're never actually fundraising based on valuation as the priority. It's really about terms and deal structure and controls. And I think that's a piece that a lot of people miss. And so I would say that the fundraising environment is challenging. It's become very, very challenging. We saw the forecast coming. We went and did a bridge round right away. As soon as we felt the market was shoring up, we said, hey, we want to put ourselves in a position of strength. And we went back to our investors and said, we're willing to do a deal at almost the same value as last year, even though we've grown 40% since last year, in order to shore up the balance sheet and make sure that we're in a position of strength, because we knew ultimately what position we want to be in by the next fundraise. And I could speak further on pace, but that's really it.
I'd love to dive into it a little bit, but and I know we'll get into more of it in Las Vegas, but this idea of weather report, waiting for rain versus having a rainmaker. I think it's a lot of, you don't want to wait for the rain. You don't want to be at the mercy of the rain. You want to be able to have it cultivated on demand. It's funny. I feel like I think I'm a bit of a rainmaker in this whole Pilot House DTC equation. So it's good to have a term for it.
I can't even imagine
awesome.
what your network must
rainmaker,
look like.
Jake. It's ridiculous.
Here's the problem. We as society don't even realize there are so many rainmakers going on at once, but we only name it for legal and banking, which is the weirdest thing, because you're right, Eric. You're definitely building relationships that are turning, the podcast up, that are building the network of the brand. The network is the rainmake. And like I said, I'll never forget, one time one of our sales associates asked me if I can get in touch with somebody, and it was like, yo, I'm already friends with that person. That was already 10 steps ahead. That was 12 months ago. And guess what? All you do is the simple introduction after, and that simple introduction no longer comes from a cold introduction. It is now coming from a friendship first. And that friendship then leads. But the kicker of the whole thing is you cannot have an agenda and you cannot have association with the operations, because then your mind is being dragged into the ops side, which doesn't give you freedom to go actually genuinely no agenda make relationships.
That's interesting. That really resonates for me. I'm definitely on the operation side, and I can see in some ways how that's interesting about having no agenda, because that's definitely something I think probably I always have the agenda of like building up my network for podcasts or for events or things like that. But I don't have an agenda ever. I'd never have an agenda for someone to come on as like a Pilot House client, which is actually interesting. That just sort of happens, right? Like we're just sort of like, we've always said that we're going to host the party, and we want everyone to come have the party. And then we want people to just ask like, oh yeah, who's hosting the party? Who's the host here? Who's the special guest or whatever, right? And just have people kind of discover it more organically rather than pushing it, have them kind of come to you. So, and you guys have done that with your brand since the beginning in every aspect of the brand, right? Like in the financial aspect, you've got Jake Dedicated doing it, but by relying so heavily on your story, which is what you guys are really known for, I think, is building in public the way you have, you're putting that halo of value out in everything you do.
But this is part of being, like, in my opinion, people are always so shocked we've never signed an NDA once with anybody. Zero. We publicize our financials to like everybody that's in that list of hundreds, and they're always like I don't understand, you're not worried? I'm like, no, because the more people that are familiar with the business model, the more people that are hearing us telling them where we are going to go and show up year after year and delivering that with having the proof along the way, the stronger the foundation becomes to build the army for when we need the capital. And so like the transparency equals trust, which equals capital calls being easier.
Amazing. Nice, guys. This is going to be a hell of an interview. We'll go into more depth in the actual, in Las Vegas, a little bit more on the nitty gritty of the capital, which I think is going to be really interesting. What's been the biggest? Yeah, go ahead.
No. And the reason why is like, hey, if you're listening to this, come to the conference, because we're going to get into like, I literally have a formula of how to set up a fundraise the way you the best way to think about what we'll go through is when you run a marathon of 5 kilometers, you don't just go run a marathon. You look at, hey, if you want to win a marathon, you look at what the top pace of the last time the marathon had. What was the pace per kilometer that the person did to win? And you know that you probably have to beat that pace. So in training, you can create a strategy on a per kilometer pace in order to literally predict if you can win the race or not. Fundraising is no different. It has the same ideology of setting up a pace. And if you nail your pace properly, you can really put yourself in a position to win that's different from the pack. And all this to say, obviously, if you don't have a good business, you're fucked anyway. So like that's table stakes. But anyway, yeah. So I'm excited to get into that. So come check out the conference because we'll get more in depth on it.
And we're going to give a fucking performance. Like, don't think our opening is WWE. It's not like, this isn't like we walk on stage and put a mic on. This is performance, theater of the absurd. This is everything that you've imagined from whack jobs. Just imagine that. You know, you're coming for entertainment and education, not just education.
It's Vegas. You got to put on a show.
Yes, baby. What stays in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas anymore, baby. We're going hard.
No NDAs. No NDAs at this conference. I refuse to sign NDAs. Also, we've got Carly from Mini Katana, and I think I've convinced her to dress up like the bride from Kill Bill for her presentation. So she'll be absolutely slaying as well. So yeah, it's just an amazing collection of people. And when you look at the attendees that are coming, it's just this just so many exciting brands. It's all about bringing these people together. I one of the other things I knew from you guys is just your use of mentors. Like, you're doing really hard shit that you haven't done before when it comes to capitalizing your business and thinking about your manufacturing, all this stuff. And I know you've had a slew of like big mentors in the day.
Still do.
And I'm just curious, like, yeah, where are, like, what do you guys describe your philosophy with having mentors, acquiring mentors? I guess it's similar to the way that you sort of cultivate the financial aspects as well.
I'll say something and then Jake, So mentors, there's so many full of shit advisors and mentors. So very, very important to know that unless someone's been there, done it, probability of you wanting to pay them or give them any true energy is very low. And so like, when we're looking at mentors, it's very simple. Have you done what we want to do in any way, shape, or form? And that means in different parts. There's so many different parts, but it's like, for instance, have you taken a company from $0, that was an idea, and scaled it to $500 million of revenue? If you check that box, like, great, I want to speak with you. Like, I want to know everything. Have you manufactured? Have you scaled a manufacturing plant? Not from 50 to 100, but from like 0 to 100, because I want to know everything that went wrong during that process. And it's like the way we think about advisors is we have precious little thing called, shares and equity. And if you do that properly and you have your options pool set up properly, then you've printed essentially a currency. Cryptocurrency is all the rave. Well, companies have been doing that forever, right? A company's shares is its tokens. And the tokens become more valuable with the collective knowledge that you bring into the consortium. That's really what it comes down to. If you're making kind of like that crypto bridge. And so I won't name names. The one that we have that's public is Mike Fata, obviously, who's done it. Mike Fata, went from 0, sold his company for $500 million, built the most ridiculous manufacturing operation in the world, was like the only company that was like triple diamond fucking BRC certified. Anyway, just world class. But we have like 5 of those. And we see it as a cheat code, and that's how we use them. So really, that's how we think about mentorship on a pay for play scale. But then I think Jake's got a whole different approach to mentorship that's even less toned down than that.
So Nick looks at technicalities. I look more for energy. And I think you need a mix. So I'm not great at looking for the technicalities. I'm not going to lie to you. It's just like I'm not a great operator. That's why I stay away from it. But what I do know is when I feel and I meet somebody and I know that their energy, their momentum, their drive will benefit the brand by having them as an advisor because of that skill that they have. And that's why if you look at our advisors, it's not just CPG junkies or operators. You have people like a guy named David Meltzer is a great example. He is a guy, sports legend. He has built an amazing business on just entertainment, pure entertainment. And he has helped us simply just with energy, networking, community, hanging out, going to hang with him allows us to feel good, to be energized, to meet fun people. And I think that's the beauty of having 3 different founders or 3 different business owners that think so differently. And the beauty of the whole thing is that we trust each other. So if Nick says, I really like this person, we're obviously all going to meet the person, but at the end of the day, we trust Nick's opinion. We value what he sees in that individual. He or she is unbelievable for some reason. Same thing goes for me. I tell you, kid you not, I might bring in a clown, a literal clown. And the reason is, guess what? They could teach us performance. They could teach us how to perform on stage, how to give your Vegas conference, the most epic conference ever. And I think that this is the value of strong partnerships that are well aligned and very trustworthy. It goes back to a core value, this whole thing. Everything that we're talking about goes back to core values, actually.
It makes me think of the CEO of Pilot House, Dave. His like key mentor came on the podcast a little while ago, and he's like Canada's most famous composer. And he gave us this like lesson in like how to pace yourself. And if you ever need to be centered, you sort of snap 4 times. He gave us all these different sort of things. And he's never marketed a product on the internet, but he's become like this critical advisor and sort of mentor for a number of key executives in the company. So it's really cool to think about it being across all these access and based on that energy that's underneath.
Performance is performance no matter what you're doing. Like
Yep.
I don't give a shit if you are the top in your field at performing, you have one thing in common with every other top performer. Something here is very strong in how you approach performance. And so few people understand that performance is agnostic. We are athletes, and athletes are entrepreneurs, and musicians are athletes. Like, it doesn't matter if you're performing at the top of what you're doing. You're the same.
And Las Vegas is going to be the Super Bowl with all these people we got together. We got a few other chocolate heads coming. I think the Tabs chocolate guys are coming. I think someone from Feastables might be there. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I love the boldness that Feastables is bringing to the game.
See nipples. You're going to see nipples.
That's the first nipple on DTC podcast. You're going to have to go to YouTube to check out Jake's.
I have gorgeous nipples, though. So
he does. Okay. I would say Jake's nipple to what is it? An areola ratio is perfect.
Areola, areola. Yeah.
Jake's nipple to areola ratio is phenomenal.
Like a glorious lily pad, guys.
That's the end of this episode. Come on.
I think that's it. We're off the rails. We're totally off the rails now. This is great, guys. Come to Las Vegas. We're talking about mentorship. That's what the room is going to be all about, is creating connections. There's obviously going to be a lot of learning that happens, but really it's just the vibe we cultivate. It's all of the dinners that happen afterwards. It's the Top Golf. It's a lot of the fun that we're going to be having in Las Vegas, guys. I can't wait.
And honestly, all of the cheat codes will be unleashed. And what's so funny is I say to every producer, 90% of people will not go in action on the cheat codes. And so come there and listen, because the cheat codes are usually the things that you think, it can't be that simple. No, it is that simple. It's just that so few people choose to action on the simplicity, because it's hard to have the patience day in, day out to do the simple things. But yeah, why wouldn't you cheat at success when you could? Like in school, it was frowned upon, right? You're doing a test, an exam, don't cheat. But in the game of life, you could actually cheat, and it's actually advantageous. It makes no sense not to.
Yeah. You can leapfrog, and that's what I love this talk with bringing Jake in as well. Is it's you can leapfrog in linear ways but you can leapfrog yourself in all sorts of different ways depending on all your life's interactions. It's all happening in Las Vegas, guys. You want to see Jake's nipples? You got to come in person.
Yeah,
Let's go.
And maybe I'll even show a nipple. Who knows? Free the nipple.
Yeah.
Bush, okay, we love you.
Well, Bush Bomb's going to be there. We got David from Bush Bomb going to be there, so there'll be Bush's.
It's going to be.
Oh, I'm fired up. I'm fired up.
Guys.
It's going to be a great time.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at direct-to-consumer, all one word, .co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.